Picking up from where we left off yesterday, because there's just no way to cram this into a single 2-hour video slash podcast simulcast, we turn to, of course, not turn to, but we are continuing discussing the firing by Donald Trump of former FBI Director James Comey, which was entirely within his purview to do, and it wasn't that doing so was a bad thing in and of itself, but the way Trump did it and when he did it was monumentally stupid. And that's the overall theme that we're discussing here. But we start off with something of comic relief. Because, I will say this for Ann Coulter. For all that she debased herself on behalf of Donald Trump in the campaign last year, at least she is showing a bit more intellectual integrity than most Trump supporters, because she is pointing out, hey, all these things that he promised during the campaign, where are they? Susan Wright, one of my fellow conservative Ronins, wrote about this at Red State. Excuse me while I laugh my ass off. Sorry, I just can't work up any sympathy for Ann Coulter. I'll give her credit for having more intellectual integrity than most Trump supporters, like I said, but she's a sucker. She was suckered, she was bilked, swindled, fooled, just like all Trumpers. And cuck-servatives, leave us remember. Now this is presumably an intelligent woman, or at least she used to be. A lawyer in a past life, author of several very successful books, commentator, and lightning rod. Coulter lost me when she jumped fully in for Donald Trump during the primaries, when there were so many gifted conservative choices. She earned my loathing when she said that a President Trump could perform abortions in the White House as long as he built Trump Wall. She took it to new depths of depravity when she actually wrote a book entitled In Trump We Trust, ripping off the motto In God We Trust. Of course, after Trump embraced amnesty last August, the title should have been changed to We're All Cucks Now. And remember how she cut short the book tour from that book after Trump embraced amnesty again last August, 9 months ago? Like a trap door opened underneath the whole thing. Well, there is no comparison between the two. But she was prepared to lead the charge to build a church of Trump, revealing just how sick she really is. I don't care that it was likely meant to be tongue-in-cheek. The way she has acted, I have my doubts about that. So, am I savoring every disappointed or outraged tweet from Ann Coulter? Like the first time I got laid, which was on my wedding night, just so there's no confusion. Like the first bite of food after a hunger strike. Like a teriyaki steak, not well done, by the way, smothered not in ketchup, but in teriyaki sauce, onions, and mushrooms. Or the first sip of cold water after being lost in the desert. Basically, every disillusioned word from Ann Coulter is like a Rippington song for me. And this was the latest one, circa May 9th. Comey firing is a red herring to distract from the fact that Trump hasn't started building the wall. Which is really funny, because even if he was intent on building the wall, it was not going to be, Congress would have to go along with it, and they don't show any indication of going along with it. And even if they did, it wouldn't start it couldn't start until next year or the year after, given all the lawsuits and environmental impact statements. And if you're talking about an actual wall, we're not talking fencing. She's talking wall, right? And where to put it, and you can't build it in the middle of the Rio Grande. You can't build it on Mexico's side, and if you build it on our side, well, there's a lot of private property in southern Texas on the border. So, in other words, even if Trump was sincere about building the wall, it was always going to be a very, very difficult thing to get done, which kind of belies the fact, or the assertion that, or the idea that Ann Coulter is intelligent. Later, she tweeted out, "Today's border wall construction update," all in caps. Let me try that again. "Today's border wall construction update! Miles completed yesterday, 0. Miles completed since inauguration, 0. Next update tomorrow!" See, I'm of the considered opinion that anybody who uses all caps and lots of exclamation points isn't really a serious person, much less a thinker. Now, did she honestly think a man with Trump's background as a con man and a backstabber could ever be trusted? Sucker! This was childish and naive of her. That, or she really isn't as savvy as she has promoted herself to be. Here's a quote from thehill.com. "Coulter has said that she is a little annoyed." Wow, that's what a little annoyed looks like on Twitter. I can't imagine what royally pissed off would be. "That Trump's core campaign promise is not," well, that's not the only one, sister, "has not been implemented by the GOP leadership, and that the funding for the project was cut during negotiations over a spending bill that prevented a government shutdown, aka omnibus," which has pretty much had every Democrat budget priority and pretty much no Republican ones. Well, keep twisting, Ann, and keep counting down those days until border wall construction begins. When you get to about 1400, I'd say it's safe to stop counting. Or, as I've been saying for quite a while now regarding Ann Coulter, hell hath no fury like a Trumper scorned. The bombshells have fallen almost hourly, it seems like, over the last 2 weeks. No wonder Trump fled to the Middle East. This was on May 10th. Remember, we're catching up here. Headline: "Before being fired, James Comey asked for more funding for Russia probe." Oh boy, Joe Cunningham brought this report to our attention a week and a half ago, with a lot of speculation that the firing of James Comey was about more than his handling of the Hillary Clinton email scandal. Here is more news that won't look good. Breaking news: days before his firing, James Comey asked the Justice Department for more money for the FBI inquiry into Russia. Here's a quote from the New York. Yeah, I know, New York Times, but fake news is not biased news. Biased news is not fake news. So there may be a bias. Of course there's a bias to this, but it's not fake. It's not just all made up. Days before he was fired, James Comey, the former FBI director, asked the Justice Department for a significant increase in money and personnel for the Bureau's investigation into Russia's interference in the 2016 U.S. presidential election, according to 3 officials with knowledge of his request. Comey asked for the resources during a meeting last. Rod J. Rosenstein, the general who wrote the Justice Justice Department's memo that was used to justify the firing of the FBI director last week. End of quote. Now again, that Comey was fired because of the Russia probe instead of the Clinton scandal is just speculation, although highly educated speculation. However, with a media that is not friendly to the Trump regime and with the number of leaks this administration has produced, the best case scenario is that Trump's timing was putrid. So, oh hell, let's get on to the next bombshell, shall we? Now, I get it, all right? I know, John McCain. He's not a conservative. He raised anti-GOP fratricide to an art form long before the Tea Party took up that particular heretofore dishonorable pastime. But he is legitimately a Republican, and he's not wrong about this. Headline, I guarantee there will be more shoes to drop in Russia investigation. I mean, the events in the past week and a half have at least partially vindicated him already. Senator John McCain, writes my gal Susan Wright at Red State, is decidedly not happy with the timing and method of FBI Director James Comey's firing. Speaking with a group of foreign officials, McCain said, according to thehill.com, I regret it. I think it's unfortunate, McCain said during a meeting with the Munich Security Conference. The president does have that constitutional authority, but I can't help but think that that is not a good thing for America. Close quote. While the reasons may differ, Democrats and Republicans alike have expressed some concerns about the firing and how it was handled. One theory floating about is that Trump sought to throw up roadblocks to the investigation into Russian meddling in the 2016 election and possible collusion with Trump's campaign. Although, given the fact that firing Comey put an outright, overt, self-professed Democrat in charge of the FBI, doesn't really... hard to see how that throws up roadblocks. Another aspect of the stupidity of this move. See, the firing came after former acting Attorney General Sally Yates testified that the Trump team was warned about hiring Michael Flynn as National Security Advisor. See, this flows into my long asserted take on Russiagate, which is that it will probably bag some minor scalps like a Michael Flynn or a Paul Manafort or a Carter Page, but it's not going to get to Trump. I mean, Trump brought in a lot of Russia-compromised people into his campaign and tried to bring them into his administration as well, but that doesn't mean that Trump was directly involved in any of this. You know, it just goes to illustrate that Trump is a fool. Trump is a moron. I mean, and parenthetically, does anybody believe that if Trump was involved in a super secret conspiracy with the Russians to subvert the 2016 presidential election in the United States, that he could have kept quiet about it? That's the best argument for exonerating Trump and Russiagate, frankly. And it underscores in turn how stupid it is for him to act the way he's acting with regard to it, because it makes him look guilty as hell. Increasingly, it appears Flynn, proceeding on here, was in deep. Trump's decision to bring him into such a sensitive position, only to have to release him weeks later, probably doesn't present the best optics. Yeah, gee, you think? However, McCain feels that as bad as the firing of Comey smells, it won't change anything. Resuming the quote from thehill.com, this scandal is going to go on. I've seen it before, McCain continued. This is a centipede. I guarantee you there will be more shoes to drop. I can just guarantee it. There's just too much information that we don't have that will be coming out. If Trump intended to disrupt the FBI investigation, McCain said, it wouldn't work. Well, and it shouldn't. All indications are that Andrew McCabe, the deputy director of the FBI, will be stepping up as acting director and that he's most capable of filling the role. And remember, again, he's a Democrat. McCain said the position as FBI director is probably the most respected individual in all of the American government, adding that he is very sorry that this has happened. McCain issued a statement earlier Tuesday saying he is disappointed with Trump's decision and calling for a special congressional committee to take the lead on the Russia probe. Of course, that turned into a special prosecutor, but we'll get to that as we go along here. Whether McCabe picks up where Comey left off or a special committee is named, or a special prosecutor appointed, I doubt anyone's suspicions or theories will be easily quelled, at least not until the investigation is closed. Whenever that is. Well, how to explain this turn from what was once the last line of defense against a Trumpetency, that being Texas Senator Ted Cruz, who last week went the safe weasel route on the Comey firing. As Jay Caruso reports, much to our disappointment, there are times when members of Congress are called upon to show they're the leaders they claim to be, especially when those members of Congress previously ran for president to be the leader of the free world. Unfortunately, in many instances, the same politicians are content to retreat into safety, not daring to stick their necks out when the moment calls for it. Donald Trump's firing of James Comey stinks on the surface level, regardless of whether or not he had the authority to do it, which he did. The point is, the timing is terrible. And Trump's reason for doing so stands in contrast to what he said about Comey in the past, praising him for his actions as it related to the investigation of Hillary Rodham Clinton. So, when Senator Ted Cruz can stand up and make a statement, it's disappointing to see him go soft. Here is Cruz's official statement on Comey. Quote, "The director of the FBI needs to be above reproach, with an unquestioned reputation for fairness and impartiality. Unfortunately, Mr. Comey has lost the confidence of both Republicans and Democrats, and frankly, the American people. The next director needs to be someone of the utmost integrity who can successfully restore the public's confidence and lead the men and women of the FBI who selflessly serve and defend our great nation." Close quote. Way to toss it off on the public, Senator. If this is how Ted Cruz felt about James Comey, why didn't he speak up sooner? This statement is weak. It's go-along time for Cruz at this point. For some reason, I suppose I can only conclude that he feels threatened for his Senate re-election in 2018. I don't know why he would think that. I mean, is he afraid he's going to be primaried? Well, Trumpism doesn't extend beyond Trump himself, so I don't think that... just ask Paul Ryan about the degree of jeopardy involved in a Trumpist primary challenge. What did Ryan win his primary election last year by anyway? 85-15? 70% victory margin? I don't think he has anything to worry about, much less in the general. So I really don't get this go along to get alongism from the man least, you would think, least likely to subscribe or succumb to such a notion. It's certainly not a statement, in any case, of a leader. Remember last July when Ted Cruz faced off against the Republican National Convention and said, "Vote your principles, not your party"? when the crowd was chanting, "Endorse Trump! Endorse Trump! Endorse Trump!" Good times. Good times. But then, I don't know, have we talked much about the Democrat side of this, of the firing of the FBI director? Because they, see, there's a reason why I don't talk much about Democrat antics these days, and it's because the Democrats are completely out. They're in the minority in the House, they're in the minority in the Senate, they don't have the White House, they've been decimated at the state level. The Democrat Party is at its lowest ebb in almost 90 years. So quite honestly, what they say doesn't matter because they can't do anything. And thanks to their Messiah, false Messiah, Barack Hussein Obama. Besides which, their arguments are incoherent, contradictory, rabidly tribalist. And when it comes to Comey firing, how long have the Democrats been insisting on and calling for the firing of James Comey? Because they blame him for costing Hillary Clinton the election last year, like when he brought up Emailgate again, reopened that investigation 10 days before the election. And then here they get what they want off about it. Oh, it's an impeachable offense. So it's a high crime and misdemeanor. I mean, these people are not serious. They're not serious. And so I don't take seriously because they don't deserve to be taken. They're ranting, ramblings, screechings don't merit analysis. It's all gibberish. I mean, the Democrats are the one asset that Trump has. The only thing that doesn't conclusively convince me that Trump has no chance at re-election in 2020 is the Democrats or the other party. I mean, at least, no, it's only 120 or so days. You know, we're not even a tenth of the way through Trump's term, so a lot can happen in that time. And Democrats may regain their footing. They may find somebody like a Julian Castro to run in 2020, in which case Trump is doomed. But as they stand right now, they're not even a major party anymore, frankly. And they keep burying themselves ever deeper. It's like a race to the center of the earth. Trump digging one huge hole and Democrats digging another, right alongside each other. But and Rich Lowry, the editor at National Review, touched on this topic as it pertains to the firing of James Comey. He calls it the worst cover-up of all time. Let me get detail for you what he's referring to. I think I provided the context for it. If it's true that Trump fired Comey because he was angry about the Russia investigation, and all the attention paid to the FBI director, as reporting today suggests, it's 1, obviously the wrong reason to fire him, 2, a colossal misjudgment, the firing will draw more attention to Comey than ever before, at least in the short term. It won't shut down the Russia investigation, which will continue as before, just with a new leader at the top. It will stoke even more suspicions about Russia and magnify any new revelations. It might well embroil the White House in a contentious confirmation battle that relitigates the Comey firing and focuses on the Russia controversy even more. And if there isn't a confirmation battle, it will only be because Trump picks someone with a sterling reputation, as opposed to a crony, who is pledged to follow Russia wherever it leads. So if this is an attempted cover-up, it will almost certainly backfire. On the other hand, whatever Trump's intentions, it is likelier than not to result in a widely respected new FBI director, because it's hard to see anyone else getting confirmed when even some Senate Republicans are suspicious of the Comey firing. One more argument, one more way that the Democrats just don't know what they're talking about because they can't keep their story straight. That, my friends, that is Trump derangement syndrome. Here is the take of conservative Ronin extraordinaire David French at nationalreview.com. By firing the FBI director, President Trump made the decisive case for a truly independent investigation. Now let's begin with this premise. It is vitally important for the health of our democracy, our republic, to influence the 2016 election, whether anti-Trump or anti-Russia hysteria led government officials to abuse their power or break the law in an effort to embarrass or discredit a new American administration. In a poisonous national atmosphere dominated by wild conspiracy theories, bipartisan, it's on both sides, there is a crying need for a sober, independent voice to investigate and articulate the key facts in a manner that builds confidence in the integrity of our government and the health of our institutions. And that's exactly why Donald Trump's decision to fire FBI Director James Comey, while defensible in the abstract, in context. In other words, the timing and the reasons and the lying about them. There are 3 ongoing investigations of Russian interference at the FBI, in the House, and in the Senate, and 2 of them have been thrown into chaos. The chairman of the House Intelligence Committee, Devin Nunes, engaged in a bizarre series of acts seemed far more calculated to help Trump win a news cycle than to meaningfully advance a vital investigation. If you want to know why there's now a special prosecutor on Russiagate, look no further than Donald Trump. Donald Trump's actions, which make it look like he's trying to cover something up, like he's got something to hide, whether or not he actually does have anything to hide, is what has brought about a special prosecutor. And as David French, conservative Ronin extraordinaire at nationalreview.com, put it on May 10th, by firing the FBI director, Donald Trump made the decisive case for a truly independent investigation. Now let's begin with this premise. It is vitally important for the health of our republic that our nation fully investigate both the extent of Russian efforts to influence the 2016 election and whether anti-Trump or anti-Russia hysteria led government officials to abuse their power or break the law in an effort to embarrass or discredit a new American administration. In a poisonous national atmosphere dominated by wild bipartisan conspiracy theories, there is a crying need for a sober, independent, and trustworthy voice to investigate and articulate the key facts in a manner that builds confidence in the integrity of our government and the health of our, Republican institutions, small r. And that's exactly why Donald Trump's decision to fire FBI Director James Comey, while defensible in the abstract, is profoundly, deeply flawed in context. There are 3 ongoing investigations of Russian interference at the FBI, in the House, and in the Senate, and 2 of them have been thrown into chaos. The chairman of the House Intelligence Committee, Devin Nunes, or Nunez, however he pronounces it, engaged in a bizarre series of acts that seemed far more calculated to help Trump win a news cycle than to meaningfully advance a vital investigation. He then rightly recused himself from the Russia probe. Now the FBI has lost its leader, leaving only the Senate Intelligence Committee, which has thankfully conducted itself thus far with professionalism and integrity. But that's not all. It's important to remember that the Attorney General, Jeff Sessions, has also recused himself from the investigation because of problematic, to put it lightly, testimony during his Senate confirmation hearing. Additionally, Trump has lost a campaign chairman, Paul Manafort, a foreign policy advisor, Carter Page, and a national security advisor, Michael Flynn, in large part because of their own problematic Russian ties. And what Trump, the best argument again against Trump being part of some super secret conspiracy with the Russians to help subvert the 2016 presidential election is because does anybody really think that Trump could keep quiet about something like that? That he wouldn't brag about it? That's a pretty convincing and strong argument for Trump's innocence, if you ask me. But at the same time, he keeps bringing people in, shady characters with Russian connections, and tries to protect them. Hell, he wants to bring Michael Flynn back, even now, in some capacity, just simply because Flynn was a bootlicking sycophant and loyalty. And this is how Trump is making himself look guilty, even if he's innocent as the wind-driven snow on Russiagate. Stupid. Trump has lost advisors. He's fired one of his chief investigators. Others have been forced to recuse themselves. All of this compounds Trump's pre-existing trust problem. Trump and his team have lied to the public repeatedly about contacts with Russia, and new reporting shows there is reason to be concerned that Trump's explanation for firing Comey, that he mishandled emailgate, is sheer pretext. Here's Politico reporting on Trump's alleged mindset. Quote, "He had grown enraged by the Russia investigation," two advisors said, frustrated by his inability to control the mushrooming narrative around Russia. He repeatedly asked aides why the Russia investigation wouldn't disappear and demanded they speak out for him. He would sometimes scream at television clips about the probe, one advisor said. Close quote. Again, acting guilty out of childish, egotistical pique, even if he really is innocent and has no connections with any kind of Russia election collusion. He's acting guilty. He's making himself look guilty. He's making this, on his end, look like a cover-up, even if it isn't. That's how he's making it look. You see, this is troubling, especially considering two other additional facts. First, as Jim Garrity noted, Trump met with Comey in January and reportedly assured him that his job was secure. In other words, that at the very time when Trump should have been easing Comey out, when it would have made a lot more sense and been a lot more plausible, Trump won the 2016 election. Let's put all this behind us. Let's move forward. Clean slate, fresh start. That would have been the time to fire Comey. Not 4 months later in the middle of the Russiagate investigation. I mean, keep in mind, in January, we knew all the material facts about Comey's handling of the Clinton email controversy, the very controversy that allegedly cost him his job. Second, the New York Times and multiple additional news outlets are reporting that Trump fired Comey just after Comey asked for additional resources for the Russia probe. Quote, days before he was fired, James Comey, the former FBI director, asked the Justice Department for a significant increase in money and personnel for the Bureau's investigation into Russia's interference in the presidential election, according to 3 officials with knowledge of his request. Comey asked for the resources during a meeting week before last with Rod Rosenstein, the Deputy Attorney General who wrote the Justice Department's memo that was used to justify the firing of the FBI director last week. Close quote. The Department of Justice is denying these allegations, but the reports undeniably compound Trump's problems. Trump fired Comey for months-old misconduct after reassuring him that he can keep his job, just as Comey escalated an investigation that is so infuriating to Trump that it causes him to reportedly scream at the television? Nothing about that builds confidence. Nothing about that says that Trump's primary concern is the integrity of the FBI. No, Trump's primary concern is Trump, always and forever. At the same time, however, online talk of a constitutional crisis is premature, to say the least. Trump can and should repair at least a measure of the damage by choosing an outstanding and respected replacement for Comey, a person who will pledge to continue the Russia investigation to its conclusion. Congress can and should establish a select committee to investigate Russian electoral interference and potential American governmental misconduct, including potential abuses of power and unlawful leaks. Amidst all the outrage and fury, it is easy to lose sight of the fact that we still do not have a single credible report of collusion between Trump campaign officials and between Trump and Russian intelligence. Between Trump campaign officials, there appears to be plenty of it. At the same time, we still don't know the full story of Russian efforts to disrupt our presidential election. In other words, the Russiagate investigation is about way more than Trump. And it was a purely counterintelligence probe until Trump opened his big yap, including firing James Comey the last couple of weeks. And now it also has a criminal side. All because Trump is an idiot. The crisis we face is not constitutional. It's a crisis of confidence in our public institutions. In an atmosphere of mistrust, conspiracy theories, bipartisan conspiracy theories, proliferate. By firing James Comey, Trump made the decisive case for a truly independent investigation. May it commence with all deliberate speed. And now that there's a Russiagate special prosecutor and one of sterling reputation and integrity and unparalleled integrity, that appears to be just what's going to happen. Jim Garrity puts us in his Wayback Machine and takes us back to January 24th of this year, or almost 4 months ago, when James Comey and the president-elect met at Trump Tower for the first time for an intelligence briefing. Trump told the FBI director that he hoped he would remain in his position, according to people briefed on the matter. Trump's aides have made it clear to Comey that the president does not plan to ask him to leave, these people said. End of quote. If Donald Trump was really bothered by how FBI Director James Comey handled the investigation into Hillary Clinton's emails, and recall, he praised the director's decisions on the campaign last autumn, when, of course, they were helping Trump politically, then the normal, sensible thing would have been to let Comey know there was an intent to make a change during the transition. Even if Trump found himself disappointed with Comey's performance once he was in the Oval Office, a normal administration gets their ducks in a row before making a big dramatic step like this. The arguments and justification for the move are put in place and on paper. Talking points are distributed. Rumors often leak. Replacement names start to surface. A figure on his way out, like Comey, starts to read the handwriting on the wall. By the time the announcement is made, it's old news. Everyone's trying to acclimate to the change. I mean, that's how you avoid political crises, basically. Which, of course, is not Donald Trump. Again, not in this administration. In the Trump regime, even White House staff gets blindsided. Remember how I talked about yesterday that the last job, one of the few jobs I wouldn't take is to work in the White House communication job? Because you're guaranteed to A, not be allowed to do your job, and B, get blamed for all of your boss's boneheaded mistakes. Here's the quote. The news stunned Comey, get this folks, who saw his dismissal on TV while speaking inside the FBI office in Los Angeles. Again, I think we mentioned that yesterday. Again, Trump has no balls. He has no courage. He couldn't even do it to Comey's face. It startled all but the uppermost ring of White House advisors, who said grumbling about Comey hadn't dominated their own morning senior staff meetings. Other top officials learned just before it happened and were unaware he was considering firing Comey. Nobody really knew, one senior White House official said. Our phones all buzzed and people said, "What?" By Tuesday evening, the president was watching the coverage of his decision and frustrated no one on TV was defending him. A White House official said he wanted surrogates out there beating the drum. Instead, advisors were attacking each other for not realizing the gravity of the situation as events blew up. How were you not defending your position for 3 solid hours on TV, the White House aide said. Well, when the White House's, when defenders, when Trump's surrogates don't know that something like this is coming, how are they supposed to defend it? With what are they supposed to defend it? This requires preparation. The White House message needs to be carefully crafted and managed and coherent. Whatever any president's message on any given topic is, it has to make sense. It has to be consistent. It has to be a united front. It has to make sense. It has to be coherent. Otherwise, you're going to look like an idiot. And Trump looks exactly like that. He is an idiot. That's the only transparency in this White House, quite frankly. Now, even if you're a diehard fan of Trump, you have to concede he's being well, no. He's not being poorly served by his staff. He's poorly serving his staff. He's sabotaging his staff. He's making He's making it impossible for his staff to do its job. If they're allowing presidential decisions to be enacted this quickly and haphazardly, well, not a question of allowing it. Trump does it and doesn't let them know it's coming. How are they supposed to do their jobs? How are they supposed to make this look good? How are they supposed to sell this to the country if they don't even know it's coming? And according to the New York Times, Chief of Staff Reince Priebus disagreed with the decision and managed to briefly delay it, but not stop it, or at least not delay it enough to come up with a coherent message on it. I mean, how could anyone at the White House possibly not grasp that fire? Well, this question is better directed at Trump. How could Trump possibly not grasp that firing an FBI director would be a supremely controversial decision? The only other time a president asked an FBI director to step down was in William Sessions' case. in 1993, and that was after a report by Attorney General William Barr that found, quote, Sessions falsely claimed a tax exemption on the home-to-work use of his official limousine, billed the government for personal trips on Federal Bureau of Investigation aircraft, built a security fence for his home at government expense, and did not cooperate with investigators looking into accusations that he received special treatment from a bank on his mortgage loan for his house in Washington. I mean, it's much easier to justify a firing when you've got a list of ethics problems, which Comey didn't have. Yeah, he botched the Emailgate investigation, but he didn't have ethics problems. But even if, again, this is why you do it 4 months ago when it looks moral, when it makes sense. Not now when it makes Trump look horrible. See, we learned that the administration was so sloppy, or rather Trump is so sloppy, and his administration couldn't keep up with it because nobody could, that Trump's decision to leak to the media before the letter firing Comey was delivered to the FBI. Again, Trump couldn't even do it in person. The director learned by watching television and initially thought it was a prank, thus making an enemy of Comey, who has kept copious notes of each and every meeting that he had with Donald Trump. And reportedly, he's going to be testifying publicly before the Senate Intelligence Committee next week, or rather this coming week. Boy. What's more, it seems clear that the Trump regime doesn't have any particular replacement candidates in line. And how could they if they didn't know this was coming? The regime looks amateurish, erratic, and disorganized, which is what happens when amateurs are running the damn show. Not everybody who is a natural-born U.S. citizen and 35 years of age or older is eligible, constitutionally eligible to be president. Very few people are qualified. And Donald Trump is clearly not qualified. So you can throw FBI director atop the long list of law enforcement leadership positions that are still waiting for a nominee from this White House. Trump has not yet named a nominee for the director of the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms and Explosives, or the chief administrator of the Drug Enforcement Administration, which is unconstitutional, but that's another story, or the director of the U.S. Marshals Service. Elsewhere in the Department of Justice, Trump has not nominated anyone to be the Assistant Attorney General for the National Security Division, Assistant Attorney General for the Criminal Division, or a DHS Assistant Secretary for Immigration and Customs Enforcement, which sounds awfully close to his core promise of his campaign. And we're now past mid-May. I'm telling you, Trumplicans, this is only going to get worse. Remember yesterday when I discussed about how James Comey was most likely similar to Chief Justice John Roberts, and that he was trying to keep his institution out of partisan politics? He didn't want to impact the 2016 election by indicting the Democrat presidential nominee, presumptive at that time, but in effect, the Democrat presidential nominee. He didn't want to affect the election, which is most likely why he came out on July 5th and said, yeah, Hillary Clinton broke the law 6 ways from Sunday, but I could find no criminal intent, just gross negligence. Even though that is a grounds for criminal prosecution, he recommended against indicting her because he didn't want to impact the election. The irony, of course, being that that very announcement impacted the election, and that's just a reflection of the times, the hyper-partisan, hyper-tribalistic times, verging on at least a metaphorical civil war that we live. It's just, so what are supposed to be impartial institutions get dragged into these things, and, Comey was no exception. He was another victim of the great political divide in the early 21st century in the United States of America. Jim Garrity comments further on this topic. You see, Comey had to sort out partisan messes that better judgment would have avoided. In other words, it put him in a no-win situation. A Kobayashi Maru. No matter what he did, he was going to piss off somebody. And in the process, he pretty much forfeited any allies he might have had. Trump's firing of FBI Director, or former FBI Director James Comey, was not merely legal, but politically plausible, until, of course, Trump completely screwed that up, in part because Comey had so few allies. Very few political figures looked at his decisions last year and concluded publicly that he had made the right calls. The director had so few allies because he kept making decisions that irked and in some cases outraged political factions on all sides. Comey kept making those decisions as our national politics kept requiring the nation's chief criminal investigator to step in. The usual guardrails of common sense and good judgment have been absent at the highest levels of our politics for years. And now, up to now, it's been limited to the Democrat Party. Now it's bipartisan. Again, that recurring theme. Begin with Comey's unprecedented press conference last July 5th, in which he announced that the FBI would not recommend charges against Hillary Clinton. Why did Comey think he had to make that extraordinary public statement? Start with Hillary Clinton's decision to use a private email server that wasn't up to government specs for security. Then look to the rest of the Obama regime, which regularly exchanged emails with Hillary on that insecure server, including emails that included classified information. Many Obama officials knew that Mrs. Clinton wasn't using a state.gov address, but to our knowledge, not a single person in the Obama regime ever objected. In 2010, State Department information technology staffers raised concerns that her system might not properly preserve records, but their boss, the Director of Information Resource Management, insisted that Mrs. Clinton's system had been approved by State Department lawyers. But it had not. In addition, that director instructed the staff to never speak of the secretary's, or the commissar's actually, personal email system again. Cover up, anyone? When Mrs. Clinton's private email server came to light, very few people in the Democrat Party said anything along the lines of, "This is a major problem, suggesting bad judgment, and maybe she isn't the best choice to be our party's nominee because of this." And you, longtime listeners of Hard Starboard Radio, know that I was maintaining precisely that right up until she clinched the Democrat nomination. I said, what did I say? I said, there is no way. The Democrats are smart about politics. There is no way that they are going to nominate Hillary Clinton. Hillary Clinton will never be the Democrat presidential nominee for this very reason. And then they did it anyway. Damnedest thing I'd ever seen. That's a bigger surprise than Trump beating Hillary in November, frankly. I just was gobsmacked that the it's a question of which was more gobsmacking. That the Democrats nominated Hillary Clinton anyway, despite Emailgate, or that the Republicans tried to match that stupidity by nominating Trump. Something for which they'll be reaping the whirlwind for years to come. I mean, it reflects just the total and utter and complete corruption on all sides of American politics. Very few Democrats even wanted to investigate Emailgate. Bernie Sanders declared that Americans were sick and tired of hearing about it. Then Attorney General Loretta Lynch made her fateful decision to meet former President Bill Clinton on his private plane just 5 days before Hillary Clinton was to be interviewed by the FBI. Lynch casually disregarded any concerns that the tarmac meeting would suggest she had a conflict of interest. Gee, you think? Comey specifically cited Lynch's decision to meet with Bill Clinton while his wife was under investigation as a sign that the Department of Justice cannot by itself credibly end this. In other words, he was trying to say, let the voters decide, in essence. Thus, Mrs. Clinton's email server had to be investigated by the FBI, and unsurprisingly, the FBI investigators found plenty of obvious instances in which Mrs. Clinton and her staff had mishandled classified information, if not outright lied to them, giving answers that strained credulity or were implausible. During the interview with the FBI, Mrs. Clinton said she could not recall more than 36 times. Oh, gee, anybody who's followed Hillary Clinton over the past generation, past quarter century, is familiar with her selectively and conveniently faulty memory. Although I suppose last year she could somewhat plausibly blame it on a potential stroke. One portion of the report notes that Mrs. Clinton could not remember whether or not she had received security briefings on how to handle classified information. This, despite the fact that she had previously signed official documents declaring that she had received proper briefings. This put Comey in an impossible situation. If he had recommended an indictment of Hillary Clinton 3 weeks before the Democrat convention, the entire Democrat Party would probably have erupted in outrage and accused him of attempting to destroy the candidacy of the first female nominee of a major party in American history, blah, blah, blah. Barack Obama would have come under intense pressure to fire Comey for politicizing the FBI. In other words, politicizing the FBI against the Democrats as opposed to for them. In that scenario, if Obama failed to fire Comey, Republicans would have accused him of letting Mrs. Clinton skate. So Comey attempted to split the baby. He criticized Mrs. Clinton for being extremely careless with classified information, but insisted that she hadn't met the criteria for criminal motive, a motive that is not required in the statute. Intentionally or not, Comey let the voters decide whether Mrs. Clinton's actions were disqualifying. Then, while investigating allegations that former Representative Anthony Weiner had sent lewd messages to underage girls, the FBI learned of the existence of emails that appear to be pertinent to the investigation of Hillary Clinton, forwarded from longtime Hillary Clinton aide Huma Abedin Weiner to Weiner, her soon-to-be ex-husband. Once again, Comey faced two bad options. If he revealed that the FBI was reopening the investigation and examining these previously unknown emails, he would be accused of torpedoing the Democrat nominee. But if he were to keep mum, he would be accused of hiding from voters in Congress the key fact that the Democrat nominee was the subject of a criminal investigation. And keep in mind, at any point, Hillary Clinton could have parted ways with Mrs. Weiner. Mrs. Weiner could have parted ways with Mr. Weiner after his infamous 2011 sexting scandal, or after it was discovered that Weiner was continuing his sexting habit into 2013. Mrs. Weiner could have turned over her husband's computer months earlier, or told the FBI that his computer held Hillary Clinton emails. Mrs. Weiner could have, Mr. Weiner could have ceased the gross behavior that destroyed his political career. Although, given the degenerate state of American culture, I'm not sure why it did, quite frankly. Had any of these figures, I mean, come on, grabbing pussies, forcibly sexually accosting multiple women, and yet Trump still won, so what does that tell you? Had any of these figures made different decisions, Comey would not have been in that difficult position in late October. For all the blame put on Comey about the election result, 2 days before the election, he announced that the FBI had reviewed the newly uncovered emails, and he and the FBI stood by their earlier decision to not recommend prosecution. Yes, 46 million Americans voted early last year, and that should not be allowed. Everybody should vote on Election Day. This is a good reason why. But another 94 million voted on Election Day. Comey shouldn't feel mildly nauseous because he didn't actually decide the election. Either way. Then the FBI began and is still continuing an investigation of any connections the Trump campaign might have had to Russia and any related skullduggery that violated U.S. laws in the 2016 elections. At any time in 2016, any of Trump's aides could have pointed out that the campaign's primary national security advisor, Michael Flynn, managed a consulting firm with many foreign clients. Flynn made the decision to appear on Russian-funded Russia Today television network as an analyst and to collect a $45,386 speaking fee at an Russia Today event in Moscow in December of 2015. Flynn made the decision to sit at Vladimir Putin's table at that event, for crying out loud. Either Trump didn't know about any of this, or he knew and didn't care. Trump's trademark recklessness. He and the advisors around the GOP nominee and president and subsequently president-elect and subsequently president could have made different, better decisions that might have given the FBI less reason to investigate. But of course they didn't. Because Trump's an idiot. As an FBI director, James Comey wasn't perfect. But there was usually an understandable reason for every decision he made. The fact that he made decisions that infuriated both Republicans and Democrats undermines the accusation that he's a partisan hack in either direction. In the past year, he's been repeatedly called in to play referee for partisan fights that should have been addressed in forums other than law enforcement. One way or another, bipartisan corruption corrupts every institution that it touches. Keeping the FBI out of national politics requires a wiser, more prudent, and more ethical group of political leaders. That is not what we have. So why was James Comey fired, Susan Wright asks at Red State. Was it because he mishandled the investigation into Hillary Clinton's email server last year? Well, maybe, but not likely. At least that's the way it seems in a recent story from the Washington Post. Quote, according to the Post, Trump was miffed that Comey did not back his claims of having been wiretapped by the Obama regime, among other things. Comey's lack of support partially led Trump to fire him, the Washington Post reported a week ago Wednesday. The Post said that Trump was also angry Comey publicly revealed the breadth of counterintelligence into Russia's meddling in the 2016 presidential race, which is way beyond Trump. Way beyond Trump. It's about far more than just Trump. Trump also disliked Comey paying more attention to the FBI's probe of Russian affairs than leaks from administration officials to journalists, which makes sense because the former didn't hurt him. He won the election. And the latter is right according to his own political interests. So of course he's going to think that way, because Trump is about one thing and one thing only: Trump. Supposedly, Trump has become increasingly frustrated with Comey and was looking for some reason to fire him. Comey himself has said that the president didn't need a justification for firing him. Still, the timing of it has rubbed a lot of people's sides of the aisle the wrong way. This is how you make enemies of everybody, and that seems to be what Trump is determined to do. Comey announced in March that the FBI's investigation would include possible ties between Trump's campaign and Russia. Trump began claiming then, without presenting evidence, that Obama wiretapped Trump Tower in New York City during the 2016 race. New York City. The word counter-punching. Comey told the House Intelligence Committee in March that the FBI had no information backing Trump's allegations. The only way the timing could have been worse would be if Trump had fired Comey immediately after he disputed Trump's claims of having been wiretapped. The Post is standing by this story, was saying that they've confirmed it with 30 different sources, some within the White House, others from the Department of Justice, the FBI, and Trump confidants, which of course won't prevent Trumpers from stupidly referring to it as fake news. Again, I return to this theme that the criticisms offered by Never Trump conservatives are constructive ones. Trump is his own worst enemy. I mean, I wish that Trumpers would stop and ask the question, why do you think that there's so many leaks, including from within the Trump White House? Maybe it's because Trump has made enemies of his entire staff. And everybody but Trump recognizes that his White House and his presidency is a sinking ship. I mean, the Real Clear Politics average currently has Trump under 40%. It's 39-54. 39 approval, 54% disapprove. That's the average. I mean, almost every poll has Trump below 40% after the last 2 weeks. You know, it could just be that everybody but hardcore Trumpers now realizes what a mistake it was for the Republican Party to nominate him. And then somehow he found his way into the White House because the Democrats nominated somebody who was even worse, even more incompetent. You know, I mean, Hillary Clinton's incompetence, Hillary Clinton's loathsomeness didn't make Trump acceptable. That's why Never Trump conservatives didn't vote for either one, because there just wasn't anything to vote for in either one. Well, here is what might be characterized as the beclowning by Donald Trump of Vice President Mike Pence, or Cuck Pence, as I referred to him last year during the campaign. This is the second time that Mike Pence has been made a liar by his boss. The first time was when then National Security Advisor Michael Flynn briefed Vice President Pence on, and lied to him in the process by saying, no, I didn't have any meetings with Russian officials during the transition, when in fact he had. And so he sent Pence out there on national television to lie unwittingly, made him look like a fool. Well, here's the second example of it in 4 months. And this time it was Trump himself who made his vice president look like an idiot and a liar. From the Politico. In interview, Trump contradicts Pence on Comey. Pence has said this week that Trump fired the FBI director following the recommendation of the DOJ, but Trump himself said a week ago Thursday, that was not the case. I mean, Trump was looking for a reason to fire Comey. Rod Rosenstein gave him one. It was over the bungling of the Clinton email-gate investigation. And then that's what Trump put in the letter, the termination letter, mostly. And then Trump comes out 2 days later and says, nah, that's not why I did it. I fired him because he wouldn't drop the Russia investigation. Trump came actually out and overtly said that publicly. My God, Trumpers, don't you realize what an idiot you have in the White House? Vice President Mike Pence has once again delivered the White House line in the face of growing contradictory evidence on a charged topic related to Russia's probable connections to the Trump campaign, or possible connections to the Trump campaign. In meetings on Capitol Hill and in interviews, Pence has said a week before last that Trump fired FBI Director James Comey on the recommendation of Deputy Attorney General Rod Rosenstein. Quote, let me be very clear that the President's decision to accept the recommendation of the Deputy Attorney General and the Attorney General to remove Director Comey as the head of the FBI was based solely and exclusively on his commitment to the best interests of the American people and to ensuring that the FBI has the trust and confidence of the people of this nation, Pence told reporters a week ago Wednesday. And just 24 hours later, Trump said in an interview with NBC on Thursday, the very next day, that he had planned to fire Comey no matter what Rosenstein told him. I was going to fire regardless of recommendation, Trump told Lester Holt. Regardless of recommendation, I was going to fire Comey. People close to the White House say Pence knew the president was thinking about firing Comey before he met with Rosenstein on Monday. Trump, these people said, was frustrated with Comey's testimony in the growing Russia investigation scrutiny into his campaign. He also disliked Comey's testimony previous week on Capitol Hill, particularly the FBI's director's use of the word nauseous to describe his reaction to the idea that he may have influenced the election. Pence, who hasn't assumed the traditional player in the White House, how would he with Trump in the Oval Office, but is liked by many, signaled support for the decision, as said one advisor to the president. In other words, he was being a loyal soldier, I guess. Pence knew this wasn't about Rosenstein writing a memo, seeing it, and suddenly deciding to fire Comey, said the person. He knows better than that. Oh, does he? That would make Pence a legit liar as opposed to just being a dupe, wouldn't it? Pence allies on Wednesday said the vice president was merely pointing to the factual turn of events. Rosenstein said well, obviously that wasn't all the facts. Rosenstein sent a memo on Tuesday recommending Comey's dismissal. Attorney General Jeff Sessions seconded the opinion, and Trump made the move. Pence had not specifically addressed who initiated the whole process, one noted. Any new manager would come in, you're going to review the operation, said Pence Press Secretary Mark Lauder, except that's not what happened. Nothing is being reviewed. No operations are being reviewed in this White House. On Thursday, Lauder acknowledged that Pence may have been privy to previous conversations about Trump's desire to fire Comey. He meets with the president, consults with the president multiple times a day. I have my doubts about that. Lauder told Politico his involvement on the Comey issue was no different, he said. I'm not going to get into the timeline because that would be embarrassing. Lauder said when asked when Pence was made aware of the president's decision. But Lauder defended the remarks Pence gave on Wednesday, even though they were blatantly counterfactual and dishonest. The vice president and the White House laid out how the actions took place. No, they didn't, he said. And the vice president was speaking yesterday to the events that led to the president's decision. Those were not the events that led to the president's decision. Firing again put the mild-mannered vice president in a difficult position of defending the president amid uncomfortable facts, and fallout. Pence, who often wears his Christian faith on his sleeve, and has said he doesn't drink around women unless his wife is present, had to defend Trump after the president had said he grabbed women by the genitals. In February, Pence assured the American people that contrary to news reports, National Security Advisor Michael Flynn had not discussed sanctions during phone calls with Russian Ambassador Sergei Kislyak. During the transition, the White House said Flynn was fired for misleading Pence. Well, now Trump is misleading Pence. I'll tell you what. I mean, this exemplifies the old adage that the vice presidency isn't worth a bucket of warm piss. But if I were Mike Pence, and by the way, he's started up his own PAC recently, so draw whatever conclusions from that you will. But if I were Mike Pence, I would go to Trump and I would give him an ultimatum. You do this to me again, you send me out to tell lies without, unwitting or witting, and I am going to resign and run against you in 2020. That's what Mike Pence would do if he had any self-respect. On the other hand, maybe he really is a cuck. Yes, Democrats are lunatics. Yes, Democrats are extremists. Yes, Democrats are radicals. Yes, Democrats are crazy. They are nuts. They are totally taken over by rank tribalism. They also don't have any power, which is why I don't take what they say seriously, and I don't really pay much attention to them. They have no ability to affect anything. Now, is it fun to point out Democrat hypocrisy? Well, sure it is. It's a cottage industry. It's a never-ending task. Is it breaking any new ground? No. And doing so is not doing Trump or the truth any favors, you see. David French providing some well-needed perspective on May 11th, nationalreview.com. Democrats are losing all sense of proportion over James Comey's termination. But that doesn't make Trump right. Their overreaction doesn't mean that Trump is a tactical genius, and it certainly doesn't mean he's honest. Yes, it's fun to create or retweet video montages showing all the times Democrats called for Comey's firing and contrast them with their all-caps outrage when Trump actually fired Comey. I mean, hell, if they wanted Comey fired, who else did they think was going to do it? That just illustrates their tribalist insanity. Now, sure, I understand the eye roll when you see people screaming about treason, although Trumpers do that even more often than the left. Calling the firing a constitutional crisis, which is laughable, and warning about an alleged coup, which is also a term Trumpers use more than even the left does. It's all too much. But, and it's a pretty big but, the evidence is accumulating that Trump fired James Comey in the middle of an accelerating investigation of Russian interference in the 2016 election, and then lied to the American people about the reason. I'll say it again. Trump may well be completely innocent of any connection to Russian attempts to undermine or subvert the 2016 U.S. presidential election. But that's not the way he's acting. And it's all driven by ego, by immature, childish pique. How dare this be going on? How dare the FBI be investigating the Russia situation? Why are you going after the leaks? In other words, why isn't Comey doing my bidding as opposed to doing his job? You see, no amount of Democrat hysteria can make that right. There is no amount of leftist hypocrisy that makes that acceptable. Now, let's be clear. Trump is asking us to believe that he actually fired James Comey for mistreating Hillary Clinton when he has loudly, repeatedly, and constantly argued that Comey was too lenient. That Comey's true sin was not recommending Hillary for prosecution. Now, suddenly, he's embraced the Democrat critique? It's not even clear if that's still the White House party line, as a matter of fact. His explanation kept shifting in important ways throughout the day. A week ago Thursday, and then came the inevitable flood of leaks that flatly contradicted Trump's story. Here's the Washington Post, quote, "Every time FBI Director James Comey appeared in public, an ever-watchful President Trump grew increasingly agitated that the topic was the one that he most desperately wanted to avoid, Russia." Why did he want to desperately avoid it? And again, once an investigation is underway, you have to let it play through. You have to let it run its course. If you know your incident, then what you say to the press is, "I haven't done anything. I'm innocent. I know I'm going to be cleared. I'm not sweating it." You don't act guilty when you're innocent. And Trump is stupid enough to be doing just that. Trump long ago questioned Comey's loyalty and judgment. The FBI director is not supposed to be loyal to the president. He's supposed to be independent and objective. That's what the role of chief criminal investigator for the federal government calls for. It's what it demands. Ethics preclude. Ethics forbid the FBI director to be loyal to the president. And I'll tell you what this is. I've said it before, I'll say it again. It's Obama envy on Trump's part. Because, remember, if you will recall, it wasn't that long ago, that Barack Obama completely corrupted and partisanized, weaponized the Department of Justice and the FBI. That's what Trump expects to do now. This is an area, this is a way in which Trump is very much like Nixon, because Nixon wanted the same thing. He thought he could play by the same rules as his Democrat predecessors. And no, he couldn't, because he was in the wrong party. And it's the same with Trump. Trump doesn't want an impartial FBI that the American people can trust. He wants one as partisan in his direction as it was for Obama over the preceding 8 years. Trump has Obama envy, and he's not getting what he wants. That's why he fired James Comey. Period. Exclamation point. Here's a quote from the New York Times. Republican consumption, Sarah Huckabee Sanders, a White House spokeswoman, said that Trump acted because of the atrocities? Atrocities? Committed by Comey during last year's investigation into Hillary Clinton's email scandal. But in private, aides said Trump has been nursing a collection of festering grievances, including Comey's handling of the Russia investigation. In other words, he wasn't burying it. His seeming lack of interest in pursuing anti-Trump leaks and the perceived disloyalty over the wiretapping claim. Again, the FBI director is not supposed to be loyal to the president. And as it pertains to the leaks, they should be investigated too, absolutely. But wouldn't you think that beyond a certain point, by this time, given the sheer number of leaks, including from within the White House itself, wouldn't you think Trumpers would start wondering that if maybe this isn't just all part of a Democrat deep state conspiracy, whatever, and start wondering whether maybe there are people in the White House and the Trump White House who are concerned that the Trumpency is a sinking ship, or that maybe they're leaking in order to try to save Trump from himself. I mean, it seems pretty clear to me that there's some of that involved in all these leaks. People don't want to be dragged down. People don't want to be caught on the Trump undertow. It's not complicated, folks. I mean, the last place, if you're looking for loyalty, the last place that you should go is Washington, D.C. I mean, think about it. Trump has relied on a very small group of advisors, usually limited to his family, for years. But you can't run the executive branch of the federal government with a small handful of people. And if Trump wanted to get more of his people into the executive branch, then why has he left so many federal posts, executive branch posts, vacant? Why hasn't he put his people, as many people as possible, into high-level jobs in his administration? You know, these questions are not going to go away, and the only throat he's slitting is his own. The only feet he's blowing off belong to him. And CNN, here's a quote from CNN. There are 2 reasons why Donald Trump fired James Comey, according to a source close to the now former FBI director. Comey never provided Trump with any assurance of personal loyalty, which he could not ethically do. And the fact that the FBI's investigation into possible Trump team collusion with Russia in the 2016 election was accelerating, which it was accelerating because of Trump's guilty-like behavior. There would not now be a Russiagate special prosecutor if it were not for Trump and his antics and actions over the last 2 weeks. It's as simple as that, folks. And finally, Politico. Well, we covered that in the previous segment. Now, to believe Trump's story, you have to believe that he did a complete about-face, that he's repudiated his previous praise and his previous critiques of Comey. For example, at a campaign rally last Halloween, Trump said the following: "It took guts for Director Comey to make the move that he made, to publicly announce that the FBI had reopened its email gate investigation." And that, of course, fit right in with his political interests. Now that gutsy move is grounds for termination? I mean, Comey was acting in accordance with Trump's political interests then. He was acting against them now. No more complicated than that. Remember Trump's one guiding principle: me, 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 me too. Trump praised Comey when he took strong action against Hillary and attacked him when he refused to recommend a prosecution. But throughout, there was one consistent theme. Trump's thoughts about Comey always directly reflected Trump's political self-interest. And they always will. So now Trump has suddenly discovered principle? Now he's gained new respect for the long-standing norms and traditions of law enforcement? You know, lawyers are familiar with a term called pretext. Employment lawyers encounter it all the time. For example, if a boss wants to fire an employee because she's black or Christian, or he wants to put his own person or his own crony in a given job and kick out the incumbent, the person who'd been there for 10 years of long, hard-working, and loyal service, they'll rarely say, "I hate Christians, pack your things." Instead, they'll look for another justification that masks the real motivation. "Oh, Jane was late last Friday. She asked to go. Jane didn't fill out her TPS report correctly. Time to leave. Jane suddenly isn't performing up to my standards." You know, in other words, a BS pretext, a BS reason that is not the real reason for dropping the axe. Trump's justification screams pretext. And if it is, then all the Trumplican tweets and columns in the world cannot paper over the troubling truth. Indeed, the attacks on Democrats soon become part of the problem. That illustrates how the Democrats are not helping themselves by going bat bleep insane every time Trump does something. By obscuring the difficult facts and providing Trump's base with a distraction from the core of the matter, the attacks enabled Trump's worst impulses. Indeed, Trump himself has picked up on their talking points, tweeting again and again and again about Democrat hypocrisy. Well, gee, again, that's not breaking any new ground. Democrats have been hypocrites for decades. Just like media bias. The fake news, biased media. Media's been biased for 90 years. At least. It's nothing new. Part of the reality that a supposed Republican administration has to deal with. If we want Trump to tell the truth, behave responsibly, and not to lash out in unreasoned fury, then it cannot just be Democrats who take him on. They're going to screw it up. Principled conservatives have to take the lead. Yes, it's right to point out when Democrats are wrong and unreasonable, but again, that's a never-ending task. It's right to push back against hysteria, but you push back for an underlying purpose. To uphold the core principles of the constitutional republic that America used to be. And clearly no longer is. Did Trump tell the truth? What was his intent? Will the FBI investigation of Russian interference proceed unimpeded? These are the core questions of the day. Not whether Bernie Sanders and Chuck Schumer are political opportunists, of course they are. Not whether Keith Olbermann has lost his mind. I don't know if he ever had one. It's time to stop enabling Trump and start seeking the truth. Even if the truth hurts. How would you like to be a Republican congressman or senator the last couple of weeks? I don't have any sympathy for them because they fell in line behind Trump last year. They could have conducted an intervention at the Republican National Convention. They could have said, no, Donald Trump is not going to hijack our party. And they could have substituted another nominee. And sure, Trumpers would have screamed bloody murder. And sure, probably would have split the party. And I still question whether it would have cost Republicans the election ultimately, because look who the Democrat nominee was. But, now they are reaping what they sowed. They could have stopped Trump a year ago. They didn't do it. And now they're reaping the whirlwind. So how would you like to be a Republican member of Congress over the last 2 weeks? Well, here's a report from Axios.com, specifically Cliff Owen, Evan Vucci. There is widespread concern among congressional leadership about Trump's frame of mind in the wake of the Comey firing. According to one Senate aide, quote, "It has to stop. Never seen anything like this in my entire career." A House leadership source said, quote, "Lots of anxiety, don't know when the next shoe is going to drop." Here are the concerns that have been heard from senior congressional sources. Number one, Trump going after FBI director he just fired on Twitter. Remember this? He threatened Comey, seeming to imply that there's a White House taping system in the Oval Office. Trump is supposed to be enacting an agenda, but is setting up a huge fight with someone who has nothing to lose. Washington, D.C. is not the place where you want to be making enemies, because if you're a supposed Republican, then you are going to have plenty of enemies to begin with. You don't need to make more. Yeah, nothing Nixonian about implying that Trump has an Oval Office taping system, is there? I mean, if you don't want the Nixon comparisons, then stop acting like Nixon. Number 2, White House is careening between crisis after crisis. We need our asset out there every day barnstorming for tax reform and health care, which is just keeping Obamacare, but that's another story. The Senate aide said, well, this is Trump. Trump thrives on crisis. Trump loves crisis because he thinks he's always going to win. And he hasn't won one yet. Again, this was not difficult to predict. This was not difficult to anticipate. This was not difficult to see coming. This is why Trump should never have been nominated. Huh? Too few Republicans listened. And certainly the party leadership didn't intervene like they should have. 3, who can tell him no? Where are his rights? Where are the adults? Well, remember that supposed selling point about Trump from the campaign? Nobody controls Trump, and nobody does. Not even Trump himself. Number 4, whose idea was it to blame Ron Rosenstein? Number 5, what an awful position this created for Richard Burr, the Senate Intelligence Committee chairman who has been working with Comey on this investigation. 6, what about the forgotten people? If they burn all this time on fights in D.C., how can they deliver results to people in Trump land? You know, it's funny how Trumplicans don't seem to really care about that at all anymore. I mean, I guess Ann Coulter does, but far too many Trumplicans are just lemmings, cultists, brainwashed, brain-dead automatons doing anything their Chino Jesus tells them. Number 7, Russia thing is self-inflicted. Root of it was Trump's Obama tweet. Very little sympathy for Trump from exasperated people. You think, again, you think maybe that's where a lot of these leaks are coming from? I mean, there are leaks from inside Trump's communications shop in the White House. Why do you think that is? Because they're being left holding the bag for Trump's mistakes. That's why I could never go to work there. Like I say, my blood pressure would pop my head like a tick. I mean, is it any wonder, ladies and gentlemen, that they could not find a Republican to defend Trump? That no Republican was outside the White House was willing to even try? That they're all hiding their heads in shame and embarrassment? Did any wonder that Sean Spicer is hiding in the bushes, for crying out loud? But again, you know, this could all have been avoided. This could all have been prevented. This was not difficult to see coming. And we never Trump conservatives were pointing it out, shouting it from the rooftops. Too few of you wanted to listen. And now you're reaping the whirlwind. Well, Eric Erickson, never Trumper and conservative Ronin extraordinaire at his website, theresurgent.com, takes a little look ahead, or at the implications of Trump's actions of late and concludes that Trump cut the legs out from under his tenure, his presidency. This is from May 12th. Expect Democrats to be kind of quiet today. Well, no, you can never expect the Democrats to be quiet, but they really are. They should just get out of the way. You know that old saying, if your enemy is self-destructing, get out of the way and let him do it. There's no reason for Democrats to say anything since Trump is self-immolating. Donald Trump admitted that Russia had something to do with James Comey's firing. That's a pretty big deal, particularly since the White House staff laid out a convincing case that Comey's termination had nothing to do with Russia. If that was not bad enough, Trump's lawyer now admits Trump has seen income from Russia. Honestly, Trumpers, how can you continue to support this guy and shill for him and make excuses for him? How can you continue to support this guy? He's screwing you over most of all. Let's not kid ourselves, folks. The overwhelming majority of Trump voters will double down in their support of Trump because they're brain-dead, brainwashed cultists. Many of us see this as unhinged, suspicious, and headed towards impeachment level. Well, if the Democrats take over the House in 2018, then yeah. But most of his supporters see him as something that he is manifestly not. Honest, heroic, and fighting against the status quo in Washington. In other words, most of his supporters have fully retreated into the land of make-believe, into total, utter, and clinical delusion. That's a pretty big divide. The problem, however, is that Donald Trump won the presidency because of about 70,000 votes in Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania. That is a very, very small margin, and one that can be impacted by these allegations. Trump's voters are sincere patriots. Well, I don't know about that. They don't have any loyalty to or love for country. They have loyalty to and love for Trump. If they really think Trump is trying to stop an investigation into Russian disruption of our republic, do we really think they'll stand by their man? Well, yeah, they will. Unless he's talking about the 70,000 in the Rust Belt, in which case, who knows? Mona Charen has a suggestion as to how Trump can escape the Comey quagmire, which, of course, he'll never avail himself of. Her suggestion is to release his tax returns. Remember, Trump is the only president ever not to release his tax returns. I mean, Bill Clinton released his tax returns. Barack Obama released his tax returns. Trump refuses to release his tax returns. Again, maybe there's nothing untoward about them. Maybe they don't reveal any Russia connections or any suspicions of Russia connections. But the fact that he won't release them makes him look guilty as hell. Again, his ego is making himself look like what his enemies are accusing him of. Trump has obeyed the law since taking the oath of office. Better record than some feared. It's a better record than he himself promised many times during the campaign. In addition to expressing contempt for a federal judge due to his ethnicity, which Trump stooped to because the judge issued a ruling against him personally, and that's the only thing that Trump cares about. He also volunteered that he would order the U.S. military to torture suspects. That this would be asking servicemen to violate the law, he scoffed. They won't refuse. They're not going to refuse me. Believe me. Yeah, believe him. He lauded tyrants and strongmen. He encouraged violence at campaign rallies. And he refused to say that he would accept the legitimacy of the vote if it went against him. So, when he made a number of solid appointments, chose a stellar Supreme Court justice, although I'll tell you what, Neil Gorsuch better be the reincarnation of James Madison, because that's really the only thing that Trump has done that is of any lasting conservative benefit. And even that was a case of him outsourcing it to the Federalist Society and Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell. If it had been left up to Trump's sole devices, he would have screwed that up too. And there's no saying that he might not screw up future Supreme Court appointments if he has a chance to make them, which he very well will. He very well probably will. Anyway, and most important, acquiesce to the rulings of federal courts, however much he may have found their reasoning flawed, fears of a lawless presidency eased. So Donald Trump is not going to be an American dictator. It's not difficult to understand why. He doesn't have the intelligence, he doesn't have the maturity, and he doesn't have the discipline to carry something like that off. He is proving to be his own worst enemy, though, which is an amazing feat considering the intensity of feeling against him. Despite the best efforts of his minions who stand ready to justify and explain away his every pratfall, usually by changing the subject to Democrat overreaction, remember what we talked about in the previous segment, his emotionalism, recklessness, and unseriousness are weighing down his presidency. In other words, he's not fit for the office. Now, of course, there were reasons to fire James Comey. The Wall Street Journal editorial page recommended that Trump dismiss him in January due to Comey's history of letting political judgments affect prosecutorial decisions, or rather, just being put in no-win situations by really crappy public, political figures, presidential candidates. Judge Lawrence Silberman elaborated on them in a recent op-ed, and newly appointed Deputy Attorney General Rod Rosenstein summarized those misjudgments in a memo. In short, Comey arrogated power to himself that the FBI chief does not possess. There is a well-established process for other officials to step in when a conflict requires the recusal of the Attorney General, Rosenstein wrote. Worse, we do not hold press conferences to release derogatory information about the subject of a declined criminal investigation. Now, that's all very well and too, but somebody should explain to Sarah Huckabee Sanders that they are not atrocities. I believe that Judge Silberman and Deputy Attorney General Rosenstein have such scruples. As for Trump, it's possible, but not really. I mean, consider that he, A, effusively praised Comey for those very acts at the time, because they helped him politically. B, he assured Comey after those acts, i.e. in January, that his job was secure. And C, he tweeted just a few days ago that Comey was too soft on Mrs. Clinton. Not too tough. Also, a person motivated by punctilious concern about the proper role of the FBI director would not have praised Comey on October 31st of last year for making Hillary Clinton's life more difficult when he announced the reopening of the Emailgate investigation. "It took a lot of guts," Trump told a rally. "I was not his fan, but I'll tell you what he did, he brought back his reputation. He brought it back," because he was helping Trump. I don't know about you, but I'm willing to say that Trump's views of Comey track perfectly with whether Comey's latest acts help or hurt Trump. And this, Democrats are in the same boat, just inverted. As usual with Donald Trump, he could not help himself out of any drama, and mentioned in the letter firing Comey that, "I appreciate you informing me on 3 separate occasions that I am not under investigation." Well, that might be true, and yet not the whole story. If Trump's campaign, though not Trump personally, is under investigation, it remains a potential problem for Trump. And if it's not true, Comey will say so when he next testifies on Capitol Hill, which will further undermine Trump's credibility. Whatever people may think of Comey, he is not considered dishonest. So when he is asked, as he was about Trump's claim that Obama wiretapped Trump Tower, did you assure the president 3 times that he was not under investigation? He will answer truthfully. And he'll be under oath, so it would behoove him to be honest. And again, what has he got to lose? Donald Trump did not think this through. He never thinks anything through. He has ADHD. He has Asperger's syndrome. He has the attention span of a fruit fly, Susan Wright put it yesterday. Members of his leaky staff have expressed surprise at the outcry. They figured that Democrats would not stick up for Comey out of loyalty to Hillary Clinton, which betrays a staggering level of naivete about Washington, D.C. There was no replacement nominee waiting in the wings. Firing Comey now instead of in January renews suspicion that the president has something to hide. The whole thing is a shambles, ladies and gentlemen. If this sheer incompetence and petulance and nothing, if this is sheer incompetence and petulance and nothing worse, Trump could save himself and the country a lot more heartburn by changing the subject, by releasing his tax returns. No one will care if he's not as rich as he claimed. The burning question is whether he has a Russia connection. And he may not have a Russia connection. He may be as innocent as the wind-driven snow. But again, why won't he release his tax returns then? Why is an innocent man, purportedly, acting so guilty?